साधु 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 नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्दस्स नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्दस्स नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्दस्स. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Supremely Enlightened One. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Dear Dhamma friends, in this world, we are made, or we are part of two major things that we call mentality and materiality. Okay? So, what these two things are? First thing, mentality is called Vedana, Sanya. This is called mentality. So, all the mind, what it works with, that is called mentality. Materiality is the four great elements. This entire body, what we see, that is called four great elements. So what are those? First, when Buddha says, Pathavi, the earth, Apo, the water, Tejo, that means the fire, and the air. So these are the four great elements that we are created with. So today we're going to learn one sutta is called Ekantadukkhasutta. It is from the Nidana Samyukta Connected Discourses, second book. Ekantadukkhasutta. Very simple, very short sutta is that. We're going to discuss why in this world that all beings with having these great elements, why they are still in this world, and why few people strive for liberation. This sutta Supreme Buddha delivered in Savatthi. Buddha says, Pathavi dhatu che hidam bhikkhave ekanta dukkha abhavissa dukkhanupatita dukkha vakkanta anavakkanta sukhena. This Supreme Buddha says, this world, what we see, it's not always in the suffering. So in this sutta, Buddha mentioned that because this Pathavi Dhatu, what we see, this great elements that entire our body is made, it is not always, it is not it's not in the pain, you know. As we think of that, okay, this is the body is there. So Ekantata abhadisa. So we cannot see that there is always the painful thing in this body. Not always result in the pain. No, it's not always explain this the body about okay, this entire earth element, is it in suffering or only and only that. Buddha says we cannot say that this Pathavi Dhatu is always as a result of suffering. Yasmachakho bhikkhave Pathavi Dhatu Sukha Sukhanupatita Sukha Anavakkanta Dukkhena Tasma Satta Pathavi Dhatuya Sarajanti. This in this Pathavi Dhatu, this in great element that we can see, there is a happiness also. as we are living in this world, it is not always a painful thing, you know, that people in this with this body, this great element of earth, what we do, we enjoy the worldly things also. Yes, there is always painful things also. When our body has a suffering, when we are having any kind of disturbance in our body, we feel pain, but not always. It's always mixed with it. So even outside of our body also, this Patvi Dhatu, what we utilize for the work, for our shelter, everything, it is not always painful. It has a pleasurable thing also. It has a happiness also. It is, um, we can express that happiness of this Patvi Dhatu. And due to that, Supreme Buddha says, because of this, these people are bound with, or they are delighted in this Patvi Dhatu. They are seeking of, oh, I want this again and again. I want to feel this again and again. It's not always okay, just this once this happened, and that I do not want this body anymore. We cannot say. We want it more and more in this world because there is not always pain or suffering that is visible here, but there is happiness also we can feel with this body. And that's why people are drowned, people are still want to stay in this body. No one wants to live. So the Patvi Dhatu, it has a painful side also and pleasurable side also. Same goes with Buddha says, Apodhatu che idam bhikkave. This Apodhatu, the element of water, this element of water also have a same thing. We cannot say this water is always painful or it is soaked in the painful, It's not always that. Water does not give always painful. Yes, when it is very hot water and we start to drink, what will be? That will be painful. But once we are very tired and we go and take a dip in a swimming pool or just we drink the cold water, how we feel? We feel comfortable also. So in the one time, this apodhatu is it painful also, but in other time, this is apodhatu or the water element. It is very helpful for also. All the burning sensation it takes away. Same goes with the tejo dhatu, the fire element. Fire we see outside. If we do not handle properly, what will happen? It will burn us. It will cause the difficulties. It will do a lot of harm to us. But without fire, outside fire, we cannot live. We cannot cook our food. We cannot sustain the energy. Same goes with inside this element also, inside this body also. Without the fire element, we cannot digest anything. Without the fire element, we cannot continue our life path. So that is also. So sometimes when we have a difficulty of digestion, all the burning sensation we feel inside, you know, that is also painful. So this tejo dhatu in the body, this fire element in the body, sometimes it can be painful, but it has the happiness also. It has a comfort also that we can express outside. And because of this happiness exists in this element, because of happiness exists in this fire element or water element, what we do? We desire to have this in our life, not only this, but for coming birth also. That's why we always say, oh, I want this kind of things. When we are visualizing, when we are say these things, I want in my next life have this kind of form. I want to be born in this place. I want to feel this happiness. What we are seeking for, what we are desiring for. We are desiring for this earth element, water element, fire element, and the air element. Next one, Buddha says the air element also the same thing. It is not always a painful. Ekantadukkhasutta abhavissa. We cannot say this is always there is an air element. It is always unpleasurable. We cannot say. You know, it has this thing. It does not give always the suffering. It's not always uh, finished in the suffering also. But it has a soft corner also. It has a pleasure also, what we feel. The air, when it is very hot, we feel discomfort. But when the cool breeze comes to us, we feel happiness. Without this air element, we cannot breathe. We cannot survive. No one in this world can do it. So, when we desire for something comfortable, what we are desiring for? We desire for this air element also. And Buddha says, because of this air element, or because of this four element, has the happiness included. So, tasma satta vayodhatuya sarajati. They see the great thing in it. They see the desirable thing in it. They need it to be have this thing in their life. Because if there is only suffering or only pain is it found in this there, what will we do? We will always try to get rid of it. When we see it, this body is always getting discomfort. Oh, I'm not having good life. So what will we do? We will try to get rid of that discomfort immediately. We cannot bear that to stay in discomfort. So in these four great elements, if we find that always there is a suffering, always there is a pain, always there is a sorrow, then do we want to stay in this body? We will not. We will want something else. But desire is there toward this body, desire is there for these great elements because there is a comfort, there is a happiness, there is a pleasure. It is found in it. All four great elements, when they come together, we see this form, we see this body. And with this body, is it always in suffering? No, it's not always in suffering. It has a pleasure also. It can sense the happiness also. It can live in comfort also. That's thing always happening. We enjoy the happiness, we enjoy the pleasure. And how much we desire this small, small pleasure that we again and again want this happiness. That desire toward this happiness, it is, Buddha mentioned, it is for this apo, patvi, apo, tejo, and vayu. This desire is for that. Supreme Buddha says, patvi dhatu che idang bhikkave ekanta sukha abhavissa. So, in this element of earth element, we cannot say this earth element is excessively pleasurable. This earth element, this body, what we see, it always only and only gives the pleasure. We cannot say that. It is deep, is so in the happiness, we cannot say. Only and only happiness we will say, it cannot be possible. This Patvi Dhatu has the side, if only happiness is found in this body, in this element of earth, Naidam Sattha Patvi Dhatuya Nibbindeyum. If only happiness is found in this earth element, then the sentinel beings, the beings in this world, wherever they are, the human world, animal world, or heavenly world, all the beings who has the body with this great element of earth, they will not try to escape from this again rebirth. They will not escape. They will not develop that I do not want this body anymore. It will do not have because in this Patri Dhatu, because in this element of earth, suffering is also exists, pain is also exists. Due to that, Satta Patri Dhatu Yani Bindu, people develop that I do not want this. They understand, oh, this is painful. If we stay there, if we stay there, this will continue to happen with again and again. So desire toward this Patvi Dhatu, they give up. The illusion that what they have made it, oh, this is the beautiful, this is the nice thing. They get rid of that. That is called Nibbida, Nibbindati. So the desire toward that, all the false, what we created the site, that people give up. So Buddha says, always in this Patividhatu is not happiness. Always there is not pleasure also as a mixed result of that. So once there is a pleasure, what we should do? We should be aware this is a temporary thing. This is a temporary thing. Suffering is also part of that. So what should I do? I should try to get rid of. I should try to get rid of this. Even in the uh, Apaya Bhumi, where the beings born to suffer, in there also, in that suffering also, the beings feel pleasure to survive. They are suffering, but they are still born to stay there because of the gratitude or the uh, happiness what we see, the smallest happiness what we feel in this Patadidhatu, in this body. So it may be inside us or the outside also. Both dhatu, both element, inner element also and outer element also has the same result. Sometimes it is comfortable, sometimes it is not. So when it is comfortable, we should not develop desire to have that. When it is discomfort, we should be mindful of that. Oh, this discomfort is also the part of it. I should try to liberate from discomfort and discomfort both. Buddha says, Apo Dhatu, the water element also has this thing. Always water element will not give happiness. When someone is drowning, doesn't matter how cold it is, the cold water also suffer. It is painful. When the water is going inside, water does not feel comfortable. When it is hot, when it has a different taste, different changes, it is not always comfortable. But sometimes it is painful also. It is difficult also. The Buddha says, because of that, because of there is a suffering also exists in this water element, people develop desire to get rid of this water element. In this fire element, there is not always comfort, but there is a discomfort also what we see. There is suffering also what we see. Due to that, people develop desire to get rid of this great element of fire in our life also. So, in short, we can say all this body, our life that what we see today, it is not always pleasurable. It has a suffering also. So when it is suffering, what we say? Oh, I do not want this suffering. But when it is pleasurable, what we say? We desire more and more. We want more and more. So what we should understand that? This is the part of good and bad karma. So once there is happiness, what we should do? We should be mindful. This time will also pass. It won't stay as same. But suffering also come after this happiness. Suffering will also come this happiness. Once that comes, then I will say same thing for this body. I do not want it. So when it is the pleasurable time, in that time I should not uh, enjoy more than it is. On that time also I should develop. Okay, let me get rid of that. The next sutta from this sutta is a very small sutta and it is also connected with this. What the Buddha says in there, Buddha says, Yo bhikkhave pathavi dhatum abhinandati. When someone, when someone, what is it called? Take pleasure. Someone take pleasure in this great earth element. What they are doing? They are they are taking pleasure in suffering. So it is equal when we see a pleasurable thing, when we say, oh, this is the most happiness what I am feeling. This is the great thing what I am feeling. In that time, what they are doing? They are taking gratitude, they are taking pleasure in suffering. Because where this four great element exists, what exists? Suffering exists. Jati, Jara, Vyadhi, Maran, this birth, aging, sickness, and death, it is exists where this great four element exists. Where is earth exists, there is birth exists, aging exists, sickness exists, death exists. So when we are taking pleasure in this Pathavi Dhatu, what we are taking pleasure in, what we are feeling happy for, we are feeling happiness in suffering. That is the same. Yo dukkham abhinandati. Someone take pleasure in the suffering. Aparimutto so dukkha smati vadami. I say you are not exempt from the suffering. When someone take the pleasure in this suffering, they are unable, they cannot escape, they cannot overcome from this, they cannot get out of this suffering. We see in this world why the people are bound. Smallest suffering comes to their life, they say, oh, I do not want. But as soon as the happiness comes in the same time, they are say, okay, let's do this. Now I want this thing. I do not want to get rid of this. And in that happiness, suffering exists. That we have created in our front of our life, the illusion what we created, all the small happiness we feel, or that is the summary of this entire body or entire life. You know? So we should not take gratitude in, or we should not take pleasure in this great element. Because when we take pleasure in the great element, we are taking pleasure in suffering. Buddha says, Yo apo dhatu abhinandati. Someone take pleasure in water element. Yo tejo dhatu abhinandati. Take pleasure in fire element. Yo vaya dhatu abhinandati. Take pleasure in the air element. Dukkham so abhinandati. That person is taking pleasure in suffering. So when we feel happiness, what we feel, what we are gratitude for, what we are saying, oh, this is good thing for, that we are saying for suffering. So this great body that what we have on this body, it's made with these great four elements. If we do not understand the true nature of these things, what will we do? What we see the pleasure, what we see the pleasure in it, we see the pleasure in suffering. Yo dukkhang abhinandati. If someone takes pleasure in the suffering, aparimutto so dukkhasmati vadami. That person cannot exempt from, that cannot get rid of suffering. Buddha says, Yojako bhikkhave pathavidhatum nabhinandati. When someone does not take pleasure in this earth element, dukkham so nabhinandati. So that person is all in the same time, this person is not taking pleasure in suffering. Yo dukkham nabhinandati. When he's not taking pleasure in this suffering, parimuttoso dukkhasmati vadami. That person can get rid of, that person can exempt himself from this suffering. So, in a simple word, we can say if someone want to attain the liberation, what they have to do? They have to come to the balanced state. Should not take pleasure in this worldly world, this this bodily thing, you know. Oh, they should understand this is a temporary, everything what I'm feeling. And this moment, this is there. And this will also pass. Now I am feeling pleasure. It will come suffering also. So if I take pleasure in this moment, what will I do in when the pleasure is finished? I will be in suffering. In that suffering, what we are doing? We will desiring more and more for happiness. I do not want this discomfort. I want comfortable thing. That will you do. So this continuous change will continuously will be happening. And in a both way, what we are doing, we are taking pleasure in the suffering, that we should understand. Once we are understand that I am taking pleasure in suffering, then this person starts to do not take pleasure in this earth element, water element, air element, and fire element. When the person does not take dukkham so nabhinandati, so your dukkham nabhinandati, the when person does not take pleasure in it, parimutto so dukkhasmati vadami, that person can himself consider himself as a liberated, that this person is free from suffering. So, as a disciple of Supreme Buddha, what we should do? We should be always be mindful of this. In the Dhatu Manasikara, what we do? There is a meditation called Dhatu Manasikara, and it mentioned all the partitions divided in four great elements. So when we investigate in that, the desire for this body, desire for water element, desire for uh, fire element, and desire for air element, what will happen? Automatically, slowly, person can get rid of. Water element is not always, or the four great elements is not always in comfort. It also has a suffering also. If there is only and only suffering is found, then people will strive for liberation. But comfort is also there. That's why people say, I want this more and more and more. They are drowned in that. But the person who wants liberation, they see it, they seize it as the truth behind it. They strive to overcome for that. Once we start to see the true nature of these four great elements, we will not desire for it again and again to happen. We will say, this life is enough for me to enjoy the pleasure. Now I want the true happiness of liberation. And the person will begin to see the truth. So all the worldly things, they will not say, okay, this is all happiness. Because as I accept it as a happiness, I am accepting the suffering also in the same time. Suffering, same time. So when you are practicing meditation, practice Dhatu Manasikara also. There is a meditation, maybe next week we can practice Dhatu Manasikara meditation, and then we will uh, we will learn the same further suttas from Dhatu Manasikara. So we will have the more understanding of that also. So remember the four great elements. What we see pleasure always, it's not always pleasurable. There is suffering also exists. And that's why people desire to get rid of this, overcome of this, or escape from these great elements. Always there is not suffering also. There is pleasure is also exist in these four great elements. And that's why people develop desire for this again and again birth. But in summary, Buddha says, once someone take pleasure in these great elements, this person takes pleasure in suffering. So remember this and understand Dharma in that way. So that's all for today. It is very short sutta. Read this sutta a couple of times and then we can discuss further is also in the next classes also. In this chapter, Dhatu Sanyukta has a beautiful explanation of couple of things. We will learn it next week. Okay, so that's all for today.